come on.
Well, last week we concluded with the people complaining about Moses again, and they were hungry, and you know, God took on an incredible responsibility to get 2 to 3 million people 300 miles, and all you've got is camels at the most, maybe donkeys, and I don't know what other riding animals they had, but mostly they had sheep and goats at best to get there. But they had, well, I said 300 miles. I don't think it was that far from Egypt to the Red Sea. And then from the Red Sea on the other side of it to Sin.
My dad figured it one time, and they went 40 years to go 80 miles.
Yeah.
Now, whether he figured it right, I don't know.
Well, it principally it is, but again, see, we don't know what was going on atmospherically. It doesn't say. It just says that whatever they did wrong, they were making note of it. But the way the rest of the world tells it, there was cataclysmic stuff happening. Giant waves went over the mountains in China, and it wiped out all the islands in the Pacific Ocean that were not big. I mean, they just inundated them. So it's like there was a whole bunch of stuff going on. And it said, Velikovsky gets in and says, for 30 to 40 years, the sun didn't shine more than just through the smoke from the volcanoes and the disruptions. And then it was time for another round. So every 52 years, this tragedy was happening. And so we don't know about that other than what Velikovsky says. Nothing in history gives any clue to that. I'm surprised that scientists didn't say that, hey, we've got some evidences through the writings of these people, but they don't use that. So anyway, Israel is having a hard time accepting what God has called them to be. And, you know, if you can imagine how difficult it would be for anybody, we want, on Moses' word, I'm speaking for God. Well, why doesn't God speak to us? Because you don't want him to. He scares you to death. So God isn't speaking to Israel. He's speaking to Moses because that was their request. So Moses he said, God, what am I going to do with? And Moses is arguing with God, and in verse 5 is where we start, and I'll back up to the last sentence in 4. It says, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota of bread, manna, every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. So, God is not beyond testing us to see what our real commitment is. And we've all been through trials and tribulations, but God is, He makes it known to Israel. I'm just checking them out. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Now again, I don't remember, we're just in the first 30 days of the wilderness. And we know that in 50 days, God institutes Pentecost after Passover. 50 days, Pentecost. Okay, so Pente's 50 days after Passover is Pentecost. And that was the Jewish second holiday. And we're trying to, okay, that hasn't happened yet. This is only, I think it said 30 days. And so, but they haven't had instructions yet on the Sabbath. So they haven't received the law yet. God is telling them now, on the 6th day, you gather a double portion. And they're probably going, why? Because on the 7th day, you can't do any work. God is telling Israel, you go out and gather, on the 6th day, you gather a double portion. And then he says, then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, at evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning, 16 or 17, you shall see the glory of the Lord. For he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us? Moses is saying this about Aaron and Miriam. Why are you fussing with us? We're just God's spokesman. And Moses said, this shall be seen when he, the Lord, gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to your fill. For the Lord hears your complaints which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. And then Moses spoke to Aaron, say to all the congregation of all of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaint. And again, I guess the people all spoke Egyptian. Aaron spoke Egyptian, and that was probably what the thing with Pharaoh was. Moses had forgotten his Egyptian, and I was thinking Moses was still fluent in Egyptian, but apparently he wasn't. We don't know what, I don't think it was a physical handicap like it indicates here, but anyway, Aaron spoke. Aaron is a spokesman for Moses. God said, fine. Now it came to pass as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. Now again, for 40 years, you've got the cloud and the pillar going with the Lord. And he told the people, he said, now, when you see the cloud and the pillar move, pack up, break camp. We're hit the road, Jack. We're on the road. So they had to keep an eye out for when God was moving. And again, we don't know what atmospherically is going on. But apparently there's no sunshine because of the volcanic eruptions that were brought about. It said that mountains were driven down into the earth and valleys became mountains. And there was all kinds of stuff like this going on that the rest of the world is talking about that nobody else does. I mean, I would think that scientists would say we have enough evidence to see what these people are saying that this was going on. So, but it's nothing. There's no scientific talk about, and one of the things is Darwin said there was no cataclysmic event that caused any problems with evolution. So he's denying that there was cosmic interaction. Darwin basically said that. And so scientists picked up and said, no, there were no traumatic Earth events that would cause all of these things that happened to the Earth to happen. That it just evolved slowly. And so, so we don't know what the truth is.
Well, we sure see a difference between what Darwin thought happened and his theory of time and evolution and all is totally wrong. And we...
Well, yeah, but this system out here has tried to perpetuate Darwin's theory, and they have taken over the educational system. So they're in control to the point that Christian thought hadn't been considered. It used to be that was all that was considered, and then Darwin came, and Christian thought about creationism and that possibility. Well, we know that 6,000, 7,000 years isn't going to cut it, and for the earth being created. So that's just a slip up on somebody's doing. So, but they're not giving any thought. See, the 7 days, the church has said, that's it. It was done in 7 days, whether it took 30 million years or not, we don't care.
Well, it took 7 days, but it may have happened 30 million years ago. But it took 7 days.
What I'm saying here is, I think from the creation of man, from God making man, bringing him here, it's only been 7,000 years. But God was ready to do this 50 million years ago. Whatever it was, the earth was created ready to go. But Satan took it over. And he and his angels, and again, that's what Peter said, the angels were judged, the earth and all that the original earth that God made, the earth for man, was destroyed by flood. And then there was another flood to destroy Noah and man's mess up. So the angels were dealt with, man was dealt with, and he said, and then there was Sodom and Gomorrah. And so it's like, okay, so God's dealing with this process, and he said, I'm not going to destroy it again. I've got a people now, but I've got to get them from Egypt to the promised land ready to be obedient. And he was having trouble with it. Took 40 years, and what he said about those people is pretty scary. So at this point, the cloud appeared with the glory of the Lord. And this Shekinah glory is when the presence of God is felt by the people. The Shekinah glory of God. And that's apparently what happened here, is God showed up again, not as a person, but as a glory in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So he's going to bring meat that night, and tomorrow morning they got to go out and get bread. And I don't know whether the manna was already pre-baked, but I don't know whether they had to use the manna as dough or how they did it, but anyway, it was provided. And so it was that quails came up at evening and covered the camp. Now again, we know that God caused great winds to bring locusts. And then he caused great wind to bring the locusts out. And then he caused great wind to move the water up. And great wind to... And so it's like, okay, he doesn't say how he brought the quail, but probably he had a strong wind and he went and blew the quail in. And in the morning, the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. Now, Velikovsky has a pretty lengthy article about some of the atmospheric conditions that would bring about something like this.
Interesting.
So he's looking at, okay, let's try to figure out logically, he's a doctor, a scientist, let's look at this and see if we can see anything that needs to be brought out. And obviously he stepped on a bunch of toes, because the book is not received well. Although it was a bestseller, it was not received well by the scientific community. They said, no, we're not buying this.
By the scientific community?
And
or by the religious community?
The scientists, which were highly influenced by Darwinism at that time.
I see.
This was back in the 50s,
I see.
and so it was like
Because
Darwinism.
we disproved Darwinism so many different ways from Sunday right now, it's not even funny. So
And it's been proven scientifically that his theories, have nothing to do with initiation of a species.
no, he's wrong.
It's true that genetically there is things that happen.
Yeah, we can evolve. We can absolutely evolve to all different kinds of conditions and that might be placed in. But our species are not all connected. We're absolutely all different phyla. We are not the same as an ape.
You're talking about the manna and the dew.
Yes, the
Numbers chapter 11, verse 9. And when the dew fell on the camp in the night, the manna fell on it.
When
When the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna fell on it.
And it came to pass that even.
But again, how do you translate the three-letter words that the Hebrew has, and all they can do? So it's whoever translates this is going to throw in their presuppositions. So they're going to, if they're scientific, they're going to shoot in some scientific stuff. If they're logic, then they're going to, okay, this looks like. So again, we don't know. We will probably never know because we don't know what the actual translation says and what the words that they had, how they correspond with what we have today. There's no real correlation. So at this point, we'll go with, I'm using the King James, and I know the New American Standard, and the NIV is going to be, it will have footnotes at least at the bottom. Schofield's going to be pretty good too. So we shouldn't have any problem with the translation. We'll just take it for what it says, and I'm going to try not to add any more Velikovsky than I have to. But I see here that there is something else going on in the world, because it correlates with Joshua going in to the promised land, and the Lord said, you show up, but the battle's mine. And so God does things, fire from heaven. If he can kill 85,000 of the soldiers of Sennacherib overnight and pinpoint their destruction with falling stones and not touch Israel 15 miles away, that's pretty supernatural. So however God did that, I mean, he had to have complete control of the atmosphere and said, "Boop, okay, let her hit, loose the," it's comets coming around 52 years, and okay, Josh, we're going to stop the sun. And so he does that after Moses. So we don't know the timing of all this, but we do know that the sequence of disaster came all around the world about every 52 years. The nations knew that these planets were going to swing by every 52 years and come into alignment and cause great havoc on the earth. So that was going on, and of course there was no real scientists to tell us what was happening, but just the stories are there to verify that it was significant. So when, verse 15, so when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" That's what, manna, manna, what is it? And that's what manna means, is what is it? For they did not know what it was, and Moses said to them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person." And an omer was about 2 quarts, half a gallon, for each person, according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. And then the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. Some more, some less. So when they measured it by omer, he who gathered much had nothing left over. He who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, "Let no one leave any of it until morning." Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. So it's...
Who knows what it was?
Who knows? I'll find out what Velikovsky's... I didn't want to make this Bible study about him, so but it's interesting that there is evidence that something was going on.
Absolutely.
And so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said to them, "This is what the Lord had said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest." Now this is really the first introduction to the Sabbath rest. A holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today. Now there it says you're baking this stuff. So it's apparently a dough-like substance. And you know, you can look at wheat and barley and oats and everything that we would think of as natural. This stuff apparently made good. And it says, "And boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning." So they had to boil it, fry bread.
Well, in verse 21 it says it became hot and melted.
Became hot and
When
melted.
In verse 21,
Yeah,
became hot and melted. So
became
now,
hot, it melted.
Now down here, they're
Out
gonna,
in the field.
now they're going to boil it.
But when they had it,
Yeah, how does that happen?
Yeah.
When they had it at home, if they boiled it, then it preserved it. You know, if you take dough and boil it,
What would happen?
it
It
kind
would
of
probably
disintegrates.
break. What
You
would it
can't.
do?
Now you can.
do? You'd get dumplings, that's about right.
Huh?
You'd get dumplings.
You get dumplings. That's right. So again, this is. I imagine they got pretty skilled at working the manna for 40 years
For
every
40
day.
years. Wow.
So they laid it up till morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. So boiling the manna preserved it and didn't cause, but if you left it out, the bugs ate it, and it turned, probably, if you left it out 2 days, it'd mold. So, and then Moses said, "Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field." So whatever this phenomena is, it only happens 6 days. So that tells you that it's God.
It's definitely God.
It's God. So it's not like,
It's
you know,
definitely
at
God.
random. It's designated, and this is what you will do. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. Now, you know, God's covering his bases. You know, I mean, if it had been some natural phenomena, these guys that went out would have found some and had some anyway. But on the seventh day, there wasn't any man out there. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? You will not go out and do work." And you went out and you tried to work. "See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath." So this is, the seventh day is a Sabbath rest from the beginning. Here God institutes the Sabbath right here. So every seventh day is a day of rest. Can you imagine if we didn't have a Sabbath? What would happen? We would be working 7 days a week. It's a break. It's like we have a break and we go to church or you go fishing or but you rest. You don't go to work. I mean, and it's pretty much that way, although there are people now who have to work on the Sabbath. We got to have an Arby's and a McDonald's and grocery stores. "See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day." You stay home. You rest. Do not go anywhere. This is a day of rest. Because if you start going out, you're going to go out and think, well, I need to mow the yard. I need to do this stuff. And so he said, you stay home and do not lift a finger. And so the people rested on the seventh day. And the house of Israel called its name Manna. What? That's the name of it. And it was like white coriander seed. And the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Then Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it, to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness. Now, did you catch that? So Moses is saying, you keep an omer. What was in the Ark of the Covenant? Manna. The 10 Commandments hadn't happened yet. And Aaron's rod that budded. That's what was in the ark. When I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer of manna in it and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And the Lord commanded Moses. So Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna for 40 years, until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came into the border of the land of Canaan. 17, that's a good place to quit. Mark, would you close us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thanks for bringing us all together today to learn more about your word, Lord. Please let it resound into our hearts and minds and make us better people. Give us your wisdom and guidance as we go out this week and reach and speak with other people. I ask all these things in your name, Lord. Amen.